Well, hello there. It is me, the villain of the reform. And I even have my little buddy with me.
Alright boys, all the cringe aside, today we'll be learning about the new reforms added in the Lions of the North and the adjacent update with it. Let's start with the monarchies. As a standard nation that does not have any unique reforms, which we will talk about afterwards, you have the choice between feudal nobility and the autocracy. Personally, I strongly recommend you go for autocracy if you can, but most likely you will start with feudal nobility and you would have to waste 50 reform progress to change to the autocracy. So do not waste that. You can get autocracy a little bit later on. Feudal nobility is not so bad, but the reality is that it doesn't really give anything. Income from vassals plus 25 is ridiculously low, and you very likely will not have vassals for at least a few years. Strength and noble privilege is still a really great one since it offers extra manpower by 15%, national tax plus 15, as well as influence for the nobility minus 10% is not bad. It has been buffed and it's a little bit more worth it now, but still I would not choose this. I would still go for the manpower, or another one coming up next. Grant noble castle rights gives you fort maintenance minus 20% and 5% loyalty every time you build a fortification. Later down in the game, once you have a lot of army tradition and you're not stressing about keeping your army tradition high enough, I actually recommend you go for this. But for the first time when you get tier 2, I actually recommend you go for the noble officer corps, because the army tradition plus 0.25 and army professionalism is a massive deal. Plus recruiting generals also gives you loyalty similar to the castle rights. You might even keep this the entirety of the game, or if you really have a ton of castles in the mid to late game and you want to get 20% cheaper castles, you can go for that. Or alternatively, you can go for the castle maintenance reduction from the beginning if you're playing as a nation that already has maintenance reduction, so you can cheese it and you can get basically free castles. You know who I'm talking about, don't you? I didn't even go with the compromise with the nobility. This is crap. It basically affects a very particular privilege, increased levies, which no longer gives influence penalty and doesn't decrease max absolutism. It's massively underwhelming, boys. So let's go for this one second. Next up, we have a lot of great ones as our tier 3 reforms. Centralized bureaucracy is probably my favorite since it offers global prosperity growth monthly, development cost modifier minus 5, and centralizing a state will refund its cost. That's not for an infinite amount of times though, so keep that in mind. Definitely go for this as your second tier reform. Alternatively, decentralizing gives you max promoted cultures and minimum autonomy in territories. Completely useless, especially in the early part of the game. Reform progress growth plus 20% is a massive deal. In most of my games, I will actually choose reform progress growth first, and then I will switch over to centralized bureaucracy later on whenever I start developing my provinces and start basically playing toll, because that extra 20% reform progress growth means you're getting all of these reforms 20% faster. Royal favoritism is okay, reduces the loyalty cost from seizing crownlands by 5%, and it disables the Colda diet interaction, but I would never go for this under pretty much any circumstance really. Regional councils is a really quirky and interesting because it gives you access to age unique state edicts. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's go for this and I can show you. For every age that we have, so that means age of discovery, reformation, absolutism, and revolutions, you have one different, and for the first stage you get feudal taxes edict. That gives you 50% tax modifier. Now for Wallachia, it's not that massive, right? But if say you're playing as France and you have the monument, as well as, you know, most of France has a lot of tax development. Look at this, 8 tax, 5 tax, 5 tax, 6 tax. It's massive. The entire French region is basically taxed, right, at the start. Going for regional councils and then setting up the extra tax edict, I am not even kidding, is actually going to give you about 100 ducats by the 1500s if you own all of France and you did not exploit your tax development, right? And you just stack that up also, and you get that 100 ducats, to be fair, once you stack it up with the Versailles monument that gives you an extra 20% national tax, and with the other national tax modifiers. It is a big deal, not gonna lie, it is actually a big deal, but it is extremely situational. Like for Wallachia, it would not do as much as it would for the French or any other region that has a lot of high tax development provinces. Last one here, vassals, marches grant increased national tax modifier and diplomatic relations. I wouldn't really go for this considering the other ones are way better, but if you really want the extra diplomatic relations, sure, go for it. It's your problem, bro. Next up for tier 4, we have grant land to the monasteries, which means religious culture no longer increases clergy influence. And that is a good one because it, I believe, gives us 15% church influence. Let me actually double check. Oh no, 20% church influence. So you're basically getting rid of 20% church influence by getting this reform. Also, constructing church and cathedrals gives you loyalty, plus selling titles increases patriarchal authority for the Orthodox Church, and you get yearly patriarchal authority or papal influence if you're Catholic. Curtail clerical privileges, prevents rebels from triggering whenever you seize crown lands, and gives you admin tech bonus reduction. Temple rights gives advisor cost reduction for admin advisor, and temples and cathedrals give 33% local tax modifier and -2 local unrest, especially if previously you took the regional councils. So that means you're gonna have the 50% tax extra per provinces, and then an extra 33% tax from the churches that you're building with this privilege, and -2 unrest. That is insane, guys. It literally gives you 83% extra tax bonus in your provinces. Remember, with the extra 20% from the French, from the Versailles Monument, you get 103 tax modifier, and you can get this by early 1500s, and that is how you get an extra 100 ducats as the French alone. Can even be more than that if you have more provinces than just the ones in France. Maintain balance of power simply gives a state loyalty, completely useless, never go for that. For the tier 5, we have admin free policies +1, leader cost -10, as well as nobility loyalty, advisor cost -10%, and the last one is possible advisors, some corruption, and monarch admin skill +1 guaranteed, as well as all estate influence -10. In my opinion, you can go for this privilege here if you really want to lower your influence for the estates and you really want to do it instantly, but unless you're in that particular weird pickle, I highly recommend you go for the advisor cost reduction at first, and after you unlock more ideas and you have a strong economy, change from advisor cost reduction to leader cost reduction, because the way that the game is right now, you can actually lower the cost for recruiting generals down to 5 mana points. I have a special video where I show you how you can lower that to 5 mana points per general, which essentially means you can have 100 professionalism from recruiting generals for basically nothing. I will link that video once it's out in the description below, so keep an eye out for that. So for now, we're gonna go for advisor cost reduction, and then, as I said, later on change to leader cost reduction. Tier 6, we have the ability to change over to the parliament as long as we have crown lands at 43%. We also can get yearly absolutism from the royal decree. Aristocratic court gives us yearly army tradition DK -0.3 and diplo rep +1. Is definitely the best option here. Army tradition is one of the most important things in the game, and diplo reputation also is a massive help. Monthly reform progress modifier stacks up nicely with the previous 20% reform progress growth from the tier 3 reform. So if you are interested in getting your reforms fast, I guess you could go for this first as your tier 6, and then afterwards switch on over to the aristocratic court. States General gives you access to the statist versus monarchist mechanics. Not really amazing, but you can use this to cheese the mechanics sometimes and get 666 leaders. It still works on the recent update, as well as you have the option to become a republic or install a theocratic government. Tier 7, we got trade efficiency, global trade, and burger loyalty equilibrium, corruption reduction, and trade company governing cost reduction, domestic trade power +15, merchant trade power +5 flat, which is a massive amount, as well as cost to promote mercantilism -10%, trade power abroad +20, institution spread, and production efficiency and yearly inflation reduction. By the time that you're going to get the tier 7 reform, production efficiency and trade efficiency is going to be the 2 most important modifiers in your country, so you really want to go for the production efficiency here since it's going to boost your economy massively, plus the inflation reduction is going to help as well if you have a lot of inflation, which you likely will. As tier 8, we have to choose between these beautiful human beings over here. Machiavellian reign gives us extra aggressive expansion and lowers impact on stability from diplomatic actions. You also can get years of separatism -5 and national unrest reduction, corruption reduction, max promoted cultures, liberty desiring subjects, rebel suppression, harsh treatment, and religious unity +25, as well as heretic and heathen provinces do not give penalties anymore. I most of the time would recommend you go for the this if you're struggling with religious unity. Otherwise, go for the Years of Separatism because it makes it easier for you to convert the world to your culture faster, since you're going to get rid of separatists faster, and it also lowers the influence for the estates. Even the promoted cultures and expand administration is pretty good. Since minus 100 expand administration is a big deal, it does not mean that this is forever though. So it's going to be 1 for the first one, then it's going to be 4 for the second one, and so on. You can see it basically scales up. For tier 9, guys, the king is and will be the governing capacity plus 250. Governing capacity is extremely important in this game. No matter what the other two privileges give, this is still the ultimate champion. Procreation cost and autonomy territory is useless unless you're doing a world conquest, in which case, yes, this is going to be useful. Possible policies, again, is not really that amazing. And tolerance of the true faith and war score versus other religions. Again, only if you're doing a world conquest, but even then, it's not as great and as significant as 250 governing capacity. For your tier 10, you have the option between admin efficiency plus 2.5. Admin efficiency, again, is great for world conquests. Free policies plus 1 is not bad also. It basically means you're not going to be losing the extra mana points from having the secondary policies. But the one I think is the best is the monarch diplo skill plus 1. No stability loss on monarch death, and ability to change national focus 5 years faster. However, if you are doing a world conquest, like I said, it would be a lot better to go for the political absolutism, so keep that in mind. Next up, republics, my boys. We tagged into Ulm over here, and they are a special republic because they're a free city, so they get minus 20% dev cost reduction now and trade efficiency plus 10, which is a significant amount, by the way. If you're a regular republic, you get to choose between noble elite, plutocracy, or oligarchy. Usually, you get assigned one of these at the start, so just roll with whatever. They're all pretty trashy, so it doesn't matter which one you have. As your second tier reform, authoritarianism, not really amazing. Political dynasties can be good since it allows you to re-elect from the ruling family, and it gives plus 1 a random candidate bonus. However, in most cases, you will go either for Republican tradition plus 0.20 since it's really hard to get this back up, or meritocratic rule is not bad also since it offers the goods produced modifier plus 5%. But my personal favorite is the extra manpower plus 10% and nobility loyalty plus 5. Added recently with the new update, it is amazing. It basically brings republics on the same levels as monarchy when it comes to their military, and pretty much the new meta in my opinion for republics. Missionaries plus 1, clergy is okay if you want to convert a lot of provinces. Most cases it's irrelevant since this is your tier 2 reform. You're never going to be in a situation in the early part of the game that you have to convert that much stuff. Tier 3, you have to choose between length of election year minus 1, which is good if you want to get 666 leaders faster. Re-election reduces estate influence by 10%, and you also get length of election plus 1. This is also good if you don't want to lose your Republican tradition that fast, because if you re-elect 1 year faster like the previous reform, then you're going to lose a lot of Republican tradition and you might become a dictatorship slash eventually monarchy. Next up, we can also force re-elections if we have trashy leaders, and the best one in my opinion is the sortition that allows election by lottery. All skills of the elected rulers change by 1. Elections only occur when the ruler dies. So it's basically like a monarchy. Whoever you get as a leader, you keep until the end, plus he gets a bonus of 1 mana points. That does mean you're likely not going to get 666 rulers as republics, but it does mean if you get a decent one, he's going to live 25% longer than he otherwise would live. So in my opinion, either go for sortition or consolidation of power. Both are pretty decent overall. For your tier 4 reforms, they are exactly the same as the ones for monarchies, so I'm not going to go through this. Governing capacity plus 250 is absolutely amazing. I always recommend you go for governing capacity plus 250 unless you are a free city, in which case you're not allowed to get that reform. Otherwise, go for provincial governments if you are a free city, or trade power if you don't plan on expanding too much around and you are a massive trade nation, I guess. Cultural administration is crap. Never go for this unless, I don't know, you really need extra max promoted cultures for some reason. There should be only one culture in your country, okay? Culturally convert all the rest. Come on. For your tier 6 reforms, we have a couple of special ones for the free cities, such as the municipal self-defense that offers a flat 5,000 manpower and land force limit plus 25. This is a massive deal, but it's not like all republics can get this. So if you are a free city, go for this. 100% worth it. The Diplo reputation and Diplo relations reform is also good, but the 5,000 flat manpower is a big deal because you're going to need the manpower and the land force limit as a free city. However, if you're a regular republic, you're not going to have access to these two reforms. You're going to have the other ones. The first one gives you the ability to get the parliament. The second one can give you extra maximum absolutism and embracement cost reduction for institutions. The third one gives you loyalty for your estates and decreases your absolutism, as well as calling the diet increases republican tradition by 2. But the best one, and the one you should always go for as a default republic, is the attorney general, that allows advisors to increase your yearly republican tradition by 0.02 per level, which means if you have 3 level 5 advisors, you're getting plus 0.3 flat republican tradition. Plus, if they are the same culture as your leader, they're 15% cheaper, the advisors. Tier 8, we have the ability for all power cost minus 2%. That's it. I'm not even gonna go for the rest of the ones. All power cost minus 2% is insanely overpowered, and you also get stability cost minus 15%. You can get possible advisors monthly autonomy irrelevant, and absolutism and re-election cost irrelevant. Like I said, always go for the first one, the best one. New men also gives you random candidate bonus +1, not worth it again. Tier 9, admin policies +1, irrelevant. Diplo policies +1, not really amazing. Military policies +1, meh. And winning wars grants you 5 republican tradition, but take note, it does not count when you do separate peace deals. As well as you get years of separatism -5 and maximum absolutism. Insanely great. Always go for this one as you tier 9. Tier 10, you get manpower recovery, morale of armies, which is, of course, you could tell from my tone, really good. Naval tradition from battles and leader fire +1 for navies, as well as an admiral becomes ruler when the current ruler dies. Military rulership is the same thing, except it's not for the admiralty, it's for the generals, so you get army tradition and so on. And you also have dynastic rule that gives you +2 diplo reputation, allows consorts, royal marriage, and elections only occur when the ruler dies. Basically, you are a republic with the king. It's a weird thing. If you want to be a republic with the king and get those sweet royal marriages and everything else that comes along that, you can go for this. Otherwise, I recommend you go for the citizenship, which gives you 10% morale of armies. Advisor cost -5 and advisor +1. Minimum autonomy in territories -10% and diplo free policies +1. I would say the first one, always go for advisor cost -5. You can stack that up with the other reforms, so you end up with quite a little bit of advisor cost reduction modifiers from your reforms at least. Guys, this is a little bit tricky because absolutism in EU4 only matters if you plan on doing a world conquest. If you're not doing a world conquest, no need to even bother with absolutism. Just give out all the privileges you want from the estates, give out all the reforms you want and that you need that help you out a lot more, and only care about absolutism if you're doing a world conquest, not in any other runs. Admin free policies, re-election cost -10%, expand administration cost -100% is 100% worth it. It also enables the parliament, so if you did not enable the parliament previously with the previous reform, you can do it from question of dictatorship here reform. And that expand administration cost means that you're going to pay 1 for the first reform and then it scales up 4 and so on, similar to how it is for the monarchies. Last but not least, the theocracies. First tier always is going to be either clerical state, monastic order, or something of the sorts. Never bother with this, just go with whatever it is. As a second tier, we have tolerance to the true faith +2, which can be pretty good if you're struggling with rebellions. Manpower recovery +10%, settler chance and native uprising chance -50%. If you plan on making a colonial empire as a theocracy, sure, you can actually go for this. It's going to help quite a lot. If you mix this in with the privilege, then you're never going to get native uprisings and you're going to get the extra 20 settlers as well. But if you're not going colonial, not worth to go for this. Mission on the high seas is especially good if you are a coastal nation or a nation with access to the sea, because it gives you extra naval force limit, marine force limit as well, so you can start building units based off of your sailors, not just based off of your manpower. National focus cooldown years -10 can be really nice, but I don't think it's worth it as your tier 2 reform. You can come back to this and select it later on if you really want to do that. Merchant +1 and global trade power is a must if you are a trading theocracy, let's call it, because trust me, there are trade theocracies in the game. I'm looking at you, Riga, right now. And missionaries +1 as well as fort defense +10. It is not worth it as a tier 2 reform. You can change to this if you really struggle with missionaries, but in most cases you will get a lot of missionaries from various ideas or from monuments or from locations, triggered modifiers, so not really worth getting, especially so early on in the game. Tier 3, we have average monarch lifespan +20%, advisor cost -15, missionary missionary strength and maintenance reduction. Maximum absolutism as a tier 3. I don't know why it's even mentioned here, because you get absolutism in the 1600s and you only care about this if you're doing a world conquest. Absolutely irrelevant so early on as well. Idea cost -5 and institution spread in true faith provinces plus 33 is really great, by the way. But I honestly think that advisor cost is the best, since it means you're going to be able to field higher level advisors for cheaper, which means you get more mana points as consequence. Tier 4 is the same like republics and kingdoms, so I'm not going to go through that. Let's just go for the expand temple rights. Tier 5, you can get corruption reduction, stab cost reduction, as well as culture conversion cost. If you're doing a one faith, one culture run, so that means, you know, you're converting everybody to your culture, 100% worth it. If you're not, then the yearly army tradition, leader without upkeep, and nobles loyalty equilibrium is insanely good. That army tradition is going to come a long way in helping you win a lot of future wars. Global trade power +5 and merchant trade power is amazing too, especially if you are, again, a trading theocracy, because those exist. I'm looking at you, Riga, once more. You guys should really check out my Riga video, by the way. It's really, really interesting. And the last reform, which you can take apparently as the Teutons, 100% worth it. Goods produced +10% basically means you're getting more trade income, more production income at the same time, and the production of wine and grain +75 and 50 respectively is a big deal. So if you're struggling economically, going for the monastic breweries is a massive yes, but it's only available to specific religions and cultures, so keep that in mind. Tier 6, you get the +1 tolerance of heretics and heathens, or yearly absolutism and maximum absolutism, or you get to choose to become a republic or a kingdom. Initially, go for the partial secularization. However, in the 1600s, after you get absolutism, and you're going to get this before the 1600s, by the way, you can change to absolutism if you plan on doing a world conquest. Tier 7 is the same like the ones for the republics and the kingdoms. Go for the production efficiency unless you are a trading theocracy, and that's becoming a meme at this point. Tier 8, you get fort defense +15%, morale of armies and shock damage, dev cost reduction, and culture conversion cost or technology -5%. Plus, this allows you to see the monarch skills of the heirs whenever your leader dies, whenever you get to choose your heir, because remember, these guys can choose their heir. So that is a big bonus, because you might be able to get a 555 666 leader as your heir rather than a 001. Personally, I think that the best one here is the combat heresy if you're planning to have a lot of wars, or dev cost reduction -5 and culture conversion cost if you're going for that one faith, one culture run, because this one mixes amazing with the tier 5 reform that gives you another -15% culture conversion cost, so you get -30% culture conversion cost as a consequence. Tier 9, you can get envoy travel time and diplo relations, as well as unlocking the ability to change government rank, meaning you can become an empire rank government. Maximum absolutism, years of separatism -10. You can also enable the parliament, which is weird. You're going to be a monastic nation / theocracy with the parliament. How does that even work in the real world? Open public elections basically gives you the same thing like the States General with the militarists versus theocrats. Dynastic order allows a general to become the leader whenever your leader dies, and it gives you land leader fire +1, and the exact same thing, except this one's for naval leaders rather than land leaders. I'll be honest, there's not a single one of these that is way above the other ones, so I'd say whatever is best in your particular situation. And if you don't have anything conclusive, then the diplo reputation can help out quite a little bit, or even the parliament, if you want to activate the parliament to get the diets, can be of massive help too, especially in single player campaigns. For tier 10, you get free policies +1, missionaries +1, and tolerance of the true faith provinces +2, morale damage received -10%, and winning battles gives you 0.5 legitimacy, republican tradition, absolutism, or religious zeal, and belief in unity gives you 50% religious unity. If you're struggling with religious unity, you should definitely go for this. If you're not struggling with it, then go for the faith and power, because that morale damage received mixed in with the other combat bonuses from before makes for some really strong religious boys. Tier 11, governing capacity +250 is the strongest, let's face it. You also can get -20% advisor cost reduction and promote culture +-50. Manpower in same culture group provinces and accepted culture provinces +10%, or national tax +50%. This is a massive bonus. Sadly, you cannot mix this in with the monarchy bonuses for tax, but it is super strong still. However, I strongly recommend you go for the governing capacity, since it allows you to get a lot more provinces resources and not have issues with your governing capacity. For tier 12, we got the juice, boys, because all of these are amazing. War score versus other religions is insane. The global crusade gives you the ability to get the great holy war casus belli on all of your neighboring heathens, as well as on the pagans. You get the mission to civilize and the Deus Vult on the non-bordering nations that may be targeted by the great holy war, as well as cost of enforcing religion through war is minus 50%. So this is definitely up there if you like to roleplay the Deus Vult machine. Priestly autonomy gives you admin efficiency plus 2.5, which is not bad actually. Advisor cost reduction minus 20%. If you mix this in with the other two advisor cost reductions, you already get like what, 50%, 60% advisor cost reductions. And goods produced plus 10%, as well as dev cost modifier minus 2.5 is amazing. Goods produced one is great if you want to go for an economic game. The advisor cost is also great if you're struggling economically, and the first two are really good for a world conquest. So it really depends on what you do in your particular game. Mold yourself based on that. There's a lot of unique reforms as well in EU4, especially tier 1, 2, and 3 reforms that usually can be altered based on your mission tree. Like the Danish here, after they ratify the Kalmar Union, they get a replacement for the starting tier 1 reform. The same goes for the Poles, the Austrians, the Timurids, and many other countries. Well, the Timurids after you form the Mughals. In general, these reforms are good for you. They're unique. They give a lot of extra flavor to that particular country, so you should try to keep those reforms unless it gives you really massive debuffs, which in some cases they do. So then you should get rid of it, like, you know, the Celestial Empire if you can. A clear example of what I'm talking here is the daimyo reform that the Japanese start with, which eventually can turn into either independent daimyo or into a shogunate if you take over Kyoto and you restore the shogunate with your name, I guess. Well, replace it really. In fact, the Ashikaga shogunate and the shogunate in general is a really great reform, especially if you plan on doing an easy world conquest, as some might call it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know it was a little bit more tedious and more difficult to follow through with, but if you did, then you're gonna love this estates guide that I've made for the recent update. And I want to give a massive thank you to all of my patrons, channel members, and Twitch subscribers. I would not be able to do this without all your support.